Well, Joe Biden's much-awaited executive order on cryptocurrencies lays out a broad strategy for how aspects of the crypto sector would be addressed. But does it do enough to answer the questions that market participants have? Well, let's bring in Mark Lam right now, Chief Executive Officer at Coinflex, a leading crypto derivatives exchange and yield platform, for his take on this landmark order. It's great to have you, Mark.
It's great to be here.
Okay. So when it all came down, the White House order outlined 7 key areas of focus. Let's see if I can recall them all. Consumer and investor protection. We have financial inclusion, among others. What's your take here? Could this be a catalyst for new products, for new coins?
The biggest thing about this executive order is that the language is extremely positive, and the tone that they're using is that the US wants to become a leader in the crypto field. And I think this is just because we're seeing more and more competition for regulatory frameworks and places for entrepreneurs to set up crypto businesses abroad. And so the US wants to actually be a home for that type of activity. And there's no new regulations that were actually laid out. There's no new specific policies, but it's really a call to action for the US and different regulatory bodies within the US to put on a united front. In a lot of countries, you go to their regulators and there's one financial regulator, maybe 2 that you're dealing with. In the US, there's more than 60 different regulators involved in regulating crypto businesses today. FinCEN's been regulating crypto businesses for 6-7 years, and that's been going really well. But you have other parts of the US government where the regulations, the policies are not clear, or it's a policy of regulation by enforcement rather than by specific published policies. So this call for a united front, this call for cohesive regulation, clear guidance to the industry, this is really exactly what companies are looking for.
The order also spoke about national security risks posed by digital currencies, and that's something we've all been talking about extensively, Mark, with the Ukraine crisis and worries that crypto could be used to evade sanctions or route money by Russian oligarchs. Do you have any thoughts there specifically?
I think the powerful thing about what we've seen in crypto in the most recent use case is that for large-scale money laundering, it's a pretty terrible tool. The public trackability of blockchains makes it extremely unwieldy and difficult to use for that. And I think other traditional mechanisms of banks and payments are basically facilitating the lion's share of that. Whereas what you do see is, for the average everyday users of money in these economies, Ukraine, Russia, other parts of the world that are affected by war and terrible outcomes, they turn to crypto as kind of this refuge of payment mechanism of last resort, and so they're able to use crypto as a way to solve their own day-to-day problems. And for large-scale criminal activity, it's just unworkable. And so it's really, I think it's, this is the reason why the U.S. government has told exchanges not to stop processing trades for Russians.
The individual is still at least protected somewhat. Let's talk about the White House here, also talking about exploring a U.S. CBDC. We know that China is almost light years ahead, almost in the final phases, if not already ready there. What's now the next step here for the United States, though, especially as non-government stablecoins have drawn questions from regulators, most recently Tether for not being sufficiently backed by USD? Do you think that there's a challenge in play here?
I think there's a huge opportunity because US dollar stablecoins are proliferating the dollar further afield. And so the dollar has this network effect and sort of reserve currency status as a payment mechanism for oil and a payment mechanism for all kinds of transactions and global settlements. But it's for retail transactions abroad, they're still mostly using their own local currencies. But now with stablecoins, US dollar stablecoins, people are using real US dollars for local trade. The question is whether they go from a regime where there's lots of private stablecoins competing to one where the government is also throwing its hat in the ring. And I think the biggest question in that regard is, are they willing to, in some sense, disintermediate the banks? You see this in the Fed's policies papers around stablecoins, where they talk about credit disintermediation. And they want banks to be heavily involved in credit disintermediation because they know that, facilitating credit lending activities, all the activities of normal banking that finance the economy, aren't something that the central bank can do itself.
Mark, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be here.